I've known Nick and Evan for some time now, really been inspired by the work they're doing. Really cool companies, really cool founders. I know a lot of their teams are in the audience here tonight, and I see a lot of other folks from the community. So welcome Intus Care teams, Republik teams, Pangea folks and interns, and everyone who came out to join us tonight. I want to start off with a practice we used to do when I was a college-age entrepreneur. Why don't we do 1-minute elevator pitches to explain to everyone in the audience what it is we do? Evan, you want to start?
Timed. Who got the timer?
Who got the timer?
No, I'm just kidding. Well, good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who haven't met, my name is Evan Jackson. I'm a co-founder and the COO at Intus Care. At Intus Care, we're a healthcare data analytics company specifically focused on providing data-backed solutions to elderly care organizations. We provide these analytics in two specific ways. Number one is through analyzing patient health. So we're actually able to make risk predictions using machine learning on future health outcomes of elderly participants by looking at their historical data. So we can predict things like upcoming hospitalizations, upcoming readmissions, things like the onset of chronic diseases like diabetes, chronic kidney disease. And then we're able to display all this information in the form of our data dashboards, which are really tracking performance metrics within these elderly care organizations.
My name is Nick. I am a music industry guy at heart. I've been in the music industry for 9 years, and I'm the founder of Artist Republik. Pretty much in the simplest of terms, at Artist Republik, what we did is we took a record label, trimmed all the fat, put it on the web, and basically said, for every music artist around the world, you can access any resource you need without giving away any piece of your career, and really empowering artists to really have control over their careers, which is something they've never had before.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adam. I'm one of the co-founders of Pangea.app. We are a platform for students and grads to break into the world of freelancing. Gen Z is adopting freelancing faster than any other generation, and freelancing is the fastest growing segment of the labor market as a whole. So you put those two things together, it's an incredible market, large market. We've gone from doing around $500 a month in GMV before COVID to last month we did 50K. We've graduated now from several accelerators, most recently from Y Combinator, and just closed a $2 million seed round on Monday.
Big money.
So I want to go back just real quick, backgrounds on each of you. What were you doing before you started the startup? Nick, what were you doing before Artist Republik?
So as I said, I've worked in the music industry for about 9 years. I started when I was a freshman in high school throwing parties for fun. And from there it grew into a bunch of different stuff. I, hosted a bunch of concerts where I was from in Connecticut, came out here, tried to host concerts here, a lot harder industry to get into. And I pivoted into marketing, which was super fun. Pretty much we grew followers for people that were artists reliably. And that introduced me to a bunch of artists. And that was where Artist Republik came out of, because really I always say, you define your business based on your market. You don't define your market based on your business. And that was the way that Artist Republik was formed, was when working with all those guys, I realized that, wow, the music industry is extremely messed up. And the only way to fix it was to actually infrastructurally change the entire thing. And so that's what I did before. Had a bunch of fun things, ran an apparel company a little bit too. Did some freelancing, but yeah.
Evan, how about you?
Yeah, so my experience was a little bit less inside the scope of Intus Care. I think that for us, really, we were able to recognize this problem while, my direct experience wasn't necessarily in this space. For me, I was just going to school. I was playing football, had some experience working in banking, as well as on the board of a couple of nonprofits. So really getting some experience in governance and studying religious studies in school. But, I think that these kind of diverse experiences that don't necessarily immediately pertain to the healthcare industry allowed me to come into this space with new ideas and a way to critically think that I developed in other areas that I could apply to this space. I think at the end of the day, really, it's about solving problems. And I like to solve problems about populations that I'm passionate about. And this was really an opportunity to do so. And so when we got started, I was actually playing football with our co-founder, Robbie, and we roomed together. And so, we came together, knew this was a space that we wanted to impact. We knew that the geriatric population had a lot of areas for improvement. And so that's what we set out to do. We spoke and essentially I was like, okay, we got to get the smartest person who I've ever met onto the team. So that's when we found our co-founder, Sam Prado. Had to get him on, found our technical developer, Alex Rothberg, and really that was the start. And I'm really excited to have an amazing team supporting us.
I think our team's going to roll their eyes. They've heard this story a zillion times. So I was actually a history concentrator. I got asked this question tonight. Oh, what'd you study? You study business? Were you computer science? Like, I studied history. Like, that makes no sense. I was like, well, you can't find a job after you graduate with a history degree. So you start something. It was that joke that got us our pre-seed round, by the way. I made with the VCs laugh. And they're like, okay, cool. There's no VCs here tonight, I guess. So. So I was studying history. I always loved film. Back in middle school, I got my first video camera when I was in 6th grade. It was the same year I was diagnosed with ADHD. I talk fast, partly because I'm from New York and I have 4 sisters, also because I have a lot of things I'm trying to get out really quickly. When I was an undergrad at Brown, I was always looking for more projects around campus because it was fun. I loved creating things. And I also worked an on-campus job in IT and media services. I was Jordan right over here. That was me. And I liked it, but I wanted a more creative outlet. And I was trying to blend those two things. And in the back of my mind, there was always like my father being like, well, when are you gonna get a real job? Or are you gonna come back to New York and get into finance or go into healthcare consulting? And I had the privilege of trying those things, but realizing early that I didn't like those things for me. So then I was lost. Together with my co-founder, John, who's our CTO, and he studied applied math. We were actually housemates our junior year. And he wanted a way to meet more students around campus, and I wanted a way to find more paid film opportunities. So in the early days, we started working on a Craigslist for students. And then ultimately realized that it wasn't going to work. Students were bad customers, and we pivoted in 2019 to what we do right now. It's been a lot more successful. So yeah, I was a little video dweeb. That was my background. I want to talk about the moments you chose to start, because I think there's plenty of people in the audience. Well, clearly you're here, but there's plenty of people probably out of this room who, they're thinking of ideas, right? And there's a big difference between having an idea for a startup or having an idea for a solution or having a desire to find a solution versus like actually going to do it. So do you remember that moment when you decided to start the company and maybe what pushed you over the edge?
Well, I think there's a key difference between the point when we decided to start the company and this point where I felt like we really decided to commit to the company. And so, actually what a lot of people don't know is Intus Care is actually the second company that we've worked on. So our freshman year when we came in, essentially there was a whole prize competition here at Brown. And so essentially the task was to come up with something that would impact the lives of 10,000 people in the renewable energy space. And so we crafted this idea. We were going to turn algae into biofuel, worked really, really hard on it day in and day out. Knew we were going to win the competition. There were only 7 companies in the competition. I mean, we went in and didn't even place top 3. And so that was a pretty devastating moment for us. And I think kind of a critical point in my decision to pursue entrepreneurship, because I hated that taste in my mouth. I really did. And so we came back around a year later, and essentially the formation of Intus was founded out of this competition coming around again. So this time the prompt was a little bit more broad. And so the prompt was essentially just, how are you going to find work for 10,000 folks? And so once again, Robbie had a little bit of experience in this space. He grew up in the geriatric care space, but we really didn't have experience there. And so in trying to develop this company for this competition, that's really the point where we decided to start it. It was this competition that we wanted to do. We wanted to win the $100 that was involved in the competition. But really the point where I felt like we were committed to this was the point where when we won Mass Challenge. So in 2019, I believe we placed first in the Rhode Island Mass Challenge competition. And I think that sometimes that outside validation, while it's not, always the most important thing, really gives you the confidence and the encouragement that you need to be able to say, okay, it's not just me who believes in this idea, but there are other folks who are industry experts who believe in this too. And I think that was the point where we all decided, okay, this is where we need to take a little bit more time to pursue this. It's when we decided to actually leave school and go work in nursing homes 40, 50 hours a week and learn as much as we could. And that was the point where I felt like we all came together and committed to this.
Well, once again, saving lives. Artists, when I always talk to people, I always say, entrepreneurship is the act of jumping off a cliff and building the plane on your way down. Artist Republik is by far one of the greatest examples of that, because it became an idea and a commitment before I even knew it was. I actually stumbled across the idea by accident. When I was running my marketing company, I wanted to come up with an idea to actually track data. So I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if you could track, what Instagram accounts actually clicked on your link in bio, instead of just knowing like, oh, I got 100 links. Like I want to know like Adam Alpert clicked my link 7 times today. The kid's stalking me. And so, but when we did that, what we found out, we're like, oh, it'd be really cool if we built this portal for artists to have these other things. And about halfway through the development of the link, we realized that you could only get the username from a URL, which would be on the web. And I don't know about you, but I don't know the last time I used Instagram on a computer. And so I abandoned that idea, and I was sitting there with this kind of portal idea, and I was like, I don't know what to do with this. And I sat down with one of my buddies and I said, hey, there's a huge problem in the music industry. I don't know how to fix it. All these artists need all these resources. If I just become a manager, it's just going to add to the problem. And he looked at me and he goes, Nick, software it. I was like, yeah, you're right. Software it. And it connected with the portal. And I was like, oh yeah, this is how you do it. But I don't think Artist Republic, the depth of it and like commitment really hit me to about like 2 months after that. I think like diving into it, like I still learn things about my company every day. Like I thought of the idea the other day. I was like, oh, we're a record label online. And I was like, oh, I never thought about that. So I think you're always learning stuff because you're always diving off that cliff and adding a wing and adding an engine, and hopefully it flies before you hit the ground. But I don't think I ever had like that exact point, which I think is my favorite part of the story, because I think a lot of people get distracted on ideas and never know when to dive in. And I think you just have to dive in. Like, don't wait until your company is fully fleshed out. Just do it, because you're going to change every single day.
We had a speaker come to Pangea earlier today and talked about doing it scared, right? And like leaping into freelancing. It's a similar, I think, idea of like, you're never going to feel totally comfortable and confident. And sometimes you just got to jump in, frightened, jumping off a cliff, not knowing where you're going to end up.
I'm still scared of half of the things that we're building at Artist Republic. Like there are things that we're building that are massive. And I actually described them to an investor today as monsters that sit under your bed and eat your toes. But that's the thing, is like you dive off that cliff and you just have to do it. Like you have no idea when it's going to be fully functioning, when it's going to be, fully fleshed out. But I think that's been the point of our success, is we've been able to just execute and, figure it out as we go.
Very specific body part. We're all doing this in Rhode Island. Why?
Wait. What about your answer?
My answer.
Yeah.
So I was in a shower one day. And 2 key concepts like smacked me in the face. So the previous summer, this is like my sophomore year. The previous summer, I'd spent 6 weeks in Alaska, 40 days in the wilderness, no cell phone, no running water, 9 strangers in the largest designated wilderness area in all of North America. You're so far north that the sun never sets. That's how the Arctic Circle is defined. That's a fun fact of the night. And there's no trails, right? So every single day you wake up and you, with your group, you say, we're going to summit that peak, or we're going to go 10 miles today or 50 miles today. And there's this act of setting an X that you go through every single day, of setting a destination and then finding your way there. But it's that act of intentionally sitting around every day and kind of setting a goal for yourself that in the front country before this, you never really did. When I'm, in middle school and high school, your parents are telling you what to do and study for this test, and your teachers are telling you what to do. You're never really taking much intentionality in terms of how we set our own destinations and goals. Maybe a little bit, but not so much. And same thing happens, like, oh, you got to apply to a great college, get into a great school, and then you got to get a great job. And we're kind of on this assembly line. And so many of us are never intentionally setting these like destinations for ourselves. But by removing myself from that, I started understanding this concept of setting an X and setting a destination and then finding a way to get there. So I had that in the back of my mind. I wasn't really sure. I kind of knew about setting my X. I didn't know where I want to set my X, and I had a vague semblance of it. And the second thing that happens, was like, when you're in Alaska, there's all these things that you, in the front country, you think you need, right? There's things that we think that we all need. We need social interaction. We got to go to this place. We have to do X. We got to do Y. We got to do Z. And we oftentimes confuse like what's a need and what's a want. But when you're in the backcountry, like there are things you need to do to survive. Like if you don't stay dry, if you don't get your tent set up, if you don't eat, you don't take care of yourself, you don't make noises, you get mauled by a bear. We saw 7 grizzly bears. So you're focused on all the things you need to do to survive. And then anything beyond that clearly is no longer a biological need, but is something you want and you desire. And when you come back to the front country, you can like walk into the Brown University dining hall and swipe a card and you have food and you have a roof over your head. And those are incredible privileges that we have. And everything beyond that is a want. And that is where the power that we all have of setting our own X's in life, right? You need to eat, you need to stay dry, you take care of yourself. But everything beyond that is you have your own control over what you choose to do. And I was in the shower and I'm like confused about what I want to do in my life. And I knew I wanted to do film, and it's like cold, it's February, it's Providence, it's crappy, it's dark. And like, you know, my housemates take like 30-minute showers and I was taking like a 30-minute shower at this point. And you can like always just choose to keep it on for a little bit longer. But at a certain point, you decide every single morning, you might not think about just when to like turn a shower off and like get after your day. And it was in that moment where I decided to like turn off the shower a little bit earlier to go like work on a film project. And I started focusing on making more of those opportunities for myself. And we had this kind of this big fuzzy concept of a platform that would allow us to do that. And it was like this very instantaneous moment. And like that day I went to the Brown University bookstore, bought like a marble journal and started writing down a lot of the thoughts that we had for Pangea, because that was what I wanted to do. It happened in the shower. Yeah. We're in Rhode Island. Why? Nick, why did you choose to start the company here?
So for anyone in this room that has had a more than 30-minute conversation with Adam Alpert, you probably will raise your children here. You probably will have all of your bank accounts here. And that same thing happened to me. I actually was going to school at Bryant, and I come from a small town in Connecticut. And so I liked being up here. Because it's like far enough away, but then not far enough at the same time. And I was up here, Adam came to speak at Bryant. And at that moment, I realized I was like, oh, there's other entrepreneurs here. And I met with him, and this was OG days of Pangea. Fun fact, I still have the $2 bill with the original Pangea stamp on it. So I will have to dig that out of the archives. And once meeting with you, and then also I remember when this building first went up, you telling me about it, all that stuff, what I started to realize was, to some extent, the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Providence almost felt like everything I was doing in my life, which was underdog. Like everything that, and it just inspired me so much because I realized there was so much growth here. Because unlike, especially in the music tech world, if we were in LA, it'd be a dime a dozen. You'd walk down, you could throw a nickel and you can find a music company every 10 feet. And same thing in New York. All of our competitors are on the same exact street. They literally walk by each other, walk into the office this morning, probably give each other dirty looks. And what I realized is being here is it opens up so many more opportunities because we're not dime a dozen. And there is a better ecosystem here. And entrepreneurs here actually like each other and they support each other. And more importantly, my professor in entrepreneurship at Bryant told me the first year, you need 3 things to have a successful ecosystem, which is you need people that want to start businesses. Once you have that, you need resources, and in terms of funding, knowledge, stuff like that. And third, you need a building, you need a place. And when looking at Providence, I realized that it had all those pieces, and unlike other cities, it was more accessible. And so when starting, that was one of many reasons why I fought a lot of people and chose to put my company here.
Well, yeah, that. I think about a year ago when the pandemic was first hitting, I was talking to someone and they asked me, what do you expect from entrepreneurship in Rhode Island with the pandemic? And I told them, I expect a lot more people to stay because it gives you the opportunity to be where you want to be, not where you believe you have to be through the virtual aspect of everything. And I think that when you look at things from an objective point of view, you realize all the benefits that Rhode Island has for startups, like spaces like this, the access to Brown, Rhode Island School of Design, really, you name it, Rhode Island has it. But if there's one thing that definitely stands out to me about Rhode Island, it's this startup community and startup ecosystem, really starting with Adam, in my opinion, from what I've seen. I remember when I was first coming into school, I think my freshman or sophomore year, I was in a class and I see Adam speaking on a panel about entrepreneurship. I'm like, oh, wait, what's going on here? You know, and to just watch this community blossom and bloom, and kind of feel like it's our community, you know, seeing people pop up, seeing new companies, you know, start from an idea and grow into this incredible reality has been really cool. And I feel like it's a lot of family nature. I'm originally from Texas, so it was a big jump for me. But I feel like I finally found my community through this community up here. And so it's a special place for me.
Cry.
We've all had an Adam conversation.
Everyone has an Adam moment in this state.
Well, for me, there were two other entrepreneurs that I followed, and that was Albie Brown, who was the year above me at Brown, who started a company called, not Park Loco, it was Spotter. It was an Airbnb for parking spots. And then Pat Sabatino, who's current CEO of Datarista, who kind of like, I knew no one coming out of Brown University besides for fellow Brown University folks. And they were the ones who like brought me out of that bubble into the wider community. So they're not here tonight, but they are with me in spirit and on LinkedIn. So I guess for me, you know, it was the sticking point was, you know, when John and I chose to really get committed with it, right? There's that moment where you start in the shower, and then there's a moment where you actually fully commit and jump off the cliff. And for me, that was sitting in an interview at an e-commerce company in New York, like a job interview in my senior year, where I just talked about Pangea the entire time. And the guy goes, it's called Harry Shavers. And I was talking to the COO of Harry Shavers, which is like $1 billion company. And I just talked about Pangea. And he says, have you thought about pursuing this like full time? Like, you won't shut up about it. It doesn't sound like an awful idea. And I was like, you can do that? So we ended up applying into something called B Lab, which is an accelerator run through Brown. And there's a bunch of accelerators in Rhode Island. And we can talk about that during Q&A if anyone is interested. And John and I chose to like apply to it. We put all of our heart and soul into it. We got in. It was like one of the greatest moments. Like when we got accepted, it was like such a big deal for us. And they gave us each like $4,000 for the summer to like pay for rent. And that was like what I needed to go back to my folks and be like, hey, like I could graduate and at least I can cover my own expenses for the summer. And they're like, okay, that doesn't sound like an awful idea. And like, you'll find a real job in September. And that's what got us to like graduate and chose to commit and stay in Rhode Island and get started here. And once we did, there was like no leaving because like the cost of New York or Boston is just so high. It's like, how are you going to go move to New York and pay, you know, $3,000 a month on rent? So John and I moved in. Now we have a bunch of our team members living with us, and like we live in a hack house, and I pay like $500 a month in rent. It's amazing. Can never do that in New York, or I don't know where I'd be living. So anyway, I fell in love with Rhode Island, and I could give you the spiel. Great people, great state. In between Boston and New York, you can go in anywhere you want. And there's the opportunity to build something really special here, I feel. Flip side of that coin, honest conversation. What have been some of the drawbacks of starting in Rhode Island? And what are things that we as a community need to improve upon?
Well, one thing that immediately pops into my head is kind of the same benefit turned to more of a, like, I wouldn't say negative, but a drawback. Is Brown, I think, in some ways. So for example, if you look up Intus Care, it doesn't pop up with our company, it pops up with Brown University. And I think one struggle and consideration that we've had is, you know, how do we separate ourselves to become a company and not a Brown University, you know, startup, and thinking about how to create your own identity through that. But of course, on the flip side of that coin, you know, the incredible reputation of Brown and RISD is really taking us a long way. But now as we think about taking the next step and, you know, getting to the point where we're raising our Series A and really stepping into this next level, it's how do we go from, you know, a Brown University startup to, you know, a startup that's doing well.
So on the other hand, about 20 minutes north here, this is tiny school, Bryant. It's amazing. Amazing. I know you guys, you know, there's Brown, there's RISD, Bryant, I'm telling you.
So way out here too.
Yeah, exactly. I see Bryant kids around here. Okay. So with that though, it's kind of the other thing, which is the other side of that coin, which is, you know, being from a small school in Rhode Island, there's great connections, but at the same time, I think there's only two things that I could really criticize Rhode Island on right now. One would be the centralization of resources. I think there's a lot. I've met so many amazing players in Rhode Island, and it blows my mind. Even there's like 7 insanely successful entrepreneurs from Bryant, all live in Rhode Island, and none of them have met each other. And it completely blows my mind because we could be doing so much more as a community and as a, city and as a state if there was more centralization of those people. And I've almost kind of taken it on myself of like, hey, let's all go meet these people and let's bring these people together, because there should be that. And I think that's one big, piece that lacks. And that also you see that on investors, every day I hear of investors moving to Rhode Island. But there isn't really a central resource for, how do you connect with people? How do you find investors? Because a lot of the ones in Rhode Island are not VC funds. Instead, they're going to be, wealthier angels. And that is word of mouth. And so I think that's one piece that definitely could be improved upon. The other piece is more for us. Not being in LA, we can't just bump into a famous artist in a coffee shop. So that definitely inhibits us on our ability to grow as a music company. But obviously we found ways around that, definitely be aggressive on LinkedIn. I'm not afraid to slide in anybody's DMs on LinkedIn. And, if you get a message from me, it's totally cool. But I think that's, definitely a big piece of it. And there's always ways around this stuff. But I think those are kind of the two improvements that I see. And, besides that, getting more companies to stay here.
I hear a big push for community tuning. Come on, Gardner, we need you. We got venture. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. Yeah, I think for us, biggest drawback. Well, when we were getting started was the lack of fellow entrepreneurs starting stuff. And I think tonight is really interesting in that it's representative, and we're not the only ones, but have gotten to a certain stage in development where they've raised, in each of our cases, several $1 million. And there's a bunch of pre-seed companies here now. And, we're all on a floor next to each other, and like that didn't exist a year ago even. And I can come to you with questions or concerns and vice versa. And that's like a really special thing. And ecosystems, we're getting to some critical mass. We've each been able to hire incredible people. I think that though, as we think about scaling to like an A and a B, when you think about your team goes beyond just being 10 folks, going to 100, how are you going to hire 50 engineers or 50 designers or 50 sales folks, right? And the question is like, will the future be remote or will the future be hybrid or somewhere in between? Is that a concern of yours at all, of like finding the right talent in Rhode Island? Is finding talent in Rhode Island on your mind at all, or not as much?
I'd say yes and no. Depends the department. You always yell at me to find a new coding language besides PHP, because supposedly no one codes in PHP anymore, even though I think Facebook was coded in PHP. So I would strongly recommend against that. But that's a big thing. I definitely think, when we're looking for PHP developers, it's definitely hard to find people around here. But in terms of finding talent, exactly the comment I said before, you have Bryant, you have RISD, you have JWU, you have Brown, you have PC, you have so many colleges around here in a 15-minute radius. So in terms of finding talent here, I think it's an amazing opportunity. And the other thing I've noticed is I don't think in terms of hybrid or remote, I think finding and recruiting talent here for in-office, I'm a huge in-office person. Don't even get me started. But I think that can be easier here, because what I've noticed about Northeastern schools, maybe, hypothesizing a little bit from just what I've seen, a lot of people that go to Northeastern schools are also from around the Northeast. I know majority of kids from Bryant are from the Northeast. And so it's much easier to convince someone from New York to move to Providence than it is to convince someone from LA to move to Providence.
Look, I'm looking at Nicole back there. You got her to move back from California. So
we threw in free lunches, a corner office, and
snack box is next level.
But yeah, no, I think that's definitely, a piece when it comes to, recruiting people. I think we definitely can use more tech talent here. But that also comes into, really changing the narrative around what the opportunities are here in Providence. If people know there's tech companies, they'll come.
Yeah, Arnell was here. He just walked out. He runs a computer science school. So, yeah.
And I just think that, as we think about that question of how do we get more tech talent here, I think that this is exactly the way we do it. Continue to develop this ecosystem to where people want to come here. People are staying here. People are getting older and working at these companies here. But to your point, I think the amount of young talent that we've been able to get on our team is just incredible. To be able to get folks from all around, Rhode Island, especially, I'm a big RISD proponent, getting folks who are our designers and having this kind of gem in our backyard. It's pretty incredible. And so as I look around our company and thinking about, our average age somewhere around the realm of 25, maybe 26, it's like, wow, being able to build something like this feels even that much better to look around and seeing young talent. People are committed to this. People are willing to, take their step forward and do something, really impactful and really real and kind of take ownership. And I think it's cool because we're all learning together at the same time, which is scary sometimes, but when it comes together the right way, it's magic.
It's been really exciting the last year seeing Bayberry open up downstairs. We got the Guild out there, and you like these spaces that attract young folk. And I would say we need more music in this town. There's nowhere to go and see a show. You walk around New York, there's always live music. And I'm just saying Ars Republik, come on.
If only I knew somebody.
If only we knew a guy.
We're working on it.
Okay.
I actually took a trip to Nashville for about a month ago. Yeah. And I texted one of my buddies that owns a bunch of restaurants in Providence. And I texted him, I said, why couldn't we build Music Row in Providence? Especially right here. Why can't we take 3 buildings and build an entire Music Row? Restaurants, rooftop bars. There is nothing special in Nashville besides for its history and country music that makes Music Row possible. It can be built anywhere else. We just need someone to have the ideas and also the capital to be able to put it together, but it can be done.
Well, you got Fishko, Tel Aviv, and Hot Club right down there. You just throw a concert.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the larger companies are ditching office space in general, right? To have an honest, a lot of companies that have procedures and structures in place, have to go remote because that's what a lot of their employees have families and want to be home. That's a generation that is embracing remote and is restrictive to going back. So there's actually a ton of vacancies in Rhode Island right now for larger spaces. Right now, we're really happy in CIC. We'll see what happens, but it's been really great. Just also it's filled up a tremendous amount over the last couple of weeks. It started off on our floor and it's doubled in capacity in terms of people who are here, which is fun.
I mean, if we're getting to the point where we're outgrowing the CIC, then I'm happy to, have that conversation and figure out something.
We're gonna get the 7th floor, right?
Yeah, get the 7th floor, and aren't there a couple of larger companies working on the 1st floor, 2nd floor, so it seems like this is a space that's really accommodating. And for us, we've been working here for about the last year and essentially doubled in size. The CIC has always found ways to accommodate us. What do you need? What folks do you need here, and figuring out a configuration of office spaces that work for us. So when that time comes, happy to have that conversation with you with a big old smile on my face. But who knows?
Do you have any waterfront properties, Mr. Leach, that we can? No.
Mass Innovation Labs in Boston, companies start there with 3 or 4 people, and then they grow to 20 people. But at some point, when you need other space or new companies are coming in to start as you've started, eventually you run out of space here.
I think so, but you also look around the jewelry district, or they're calling it the design and innovation district now. We have so much developable land, more so than any other city I've ever seen. I mean, just look at all the new developments happened last year. And I know they're planning on putting a new where Dune Brothers is. I hope they move Dune Brothers just across the street, but that's going to be a new building. And then behind this building is another building. But right now they haven't even sold the 6th and 7th floors yet. So right now there's tons of capacity. And honestly, it would be a great problem to have, not having enough space. But I don't think we'll have that problem. Yeah, true.
I mean, I know I'm going to be fighting Adam for the office that he has next to me. But I also think it depends what kind of growth you need. I know our office layout in CIC is probably one of my favorites. I used to work across in this little 2-person one. I used to stare at it every day and be like, that's going to be my office. But the nice thing is as we grow, we already have the plans, that office is going to be for our operations team. The office next door will start being moved over to our development team and stuff like that. So we'll be able to scale out across the floor. And I think CIC kind of designed themselves in that way so that they were easy to scale. I know on the 3rd floor, they actually have, makeshift walls and doors that can just be blown out if an office wants to expand into the next office. But I do know, we were actually, before moving here, we were actually looking at 1-day vol. And there's so much office space around here still. But I definitely think, hopefully, yeah, I agree. I hope there is a problem that we run out of office space.
Any other questions in the audience? I know we have some entrepreneurs out here. You got 3 of us up here. Yes, in the back.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the microphone just so we can pick it up on the recording as well.
So I'm building a platform, and I was trying to engage locally with some software engineers or people that know a little bit about the space. So I was hoping that maybe you could talk about some of the resources available.
There's a great app, Pangea.
I'm actually working with a project with Northeastern University, but I live and work here, so I'd rather engage locally.
Yeah.
So a lot of it depends on your stage and kind of the type of engagement you're looking for. For instance, if you're looking for we have tons of software engineers who are students. They may not be a great fit if you're just getting started out. They're much better to complement an existing engineering team. We're currently hiring our first 2 full-time engineers, 1 senior level, 1 more junior. And my process has been contacting people on LinkedIn. I did a LinkedIn search for back-end engineer, Rhode Island. There's 380 of them. I hit up every single one. And then I've been getting coffee chats at 7 Stars Bakery every day, just get to know you, get to know us. A lot of it in that initial phase is going to be getting them excited by the vision and you getting excited by them. I wouldn't get so focused on the specific tech specs of the project. I'd focus more on your mission and why they should spend time on it. Because granted, if you're probably early stage, you probably are not going to be paying them $100,000 a year. There might not be any equity. I don't know what the situation is necessarily. So in the early days, it's all about getting someone passionate about the problem you're solving. So start with a 20-minute, I call them casual, informal coffee chats, because a lot of them are employed by not other startups, but some of the larger companies in the space and that's part of the value of Rhode Island. We have larger companies where people are more senior level, they've been working there for 5 years and might be looking to join and start up. And that's why Silicon Valley has been such a resilient ecosystem, because all the startups just pull out of Google and Facebook and Amazon. And that's why that's a really robust ecosystem for startups. We don't have that as much, but we have a couple. So start with informal coffee chats, get them excited. If you have any traction, it's sales, right? Just like you're talking to an investor, I talk to potential employees as if they're investing in the company, because they are.
Have you engaged any talent acquisition companies or recruiters or anything to try and fill positions?
We have, and it's actually gone really, really well for the one time that we did it. But that was well. And I think, when you're in an immediate need of, someone to really come in and fill a position, it really helps to have someone who's advocating on your behalf, parsing through resumes, parsing through the folks and kind of putting you in front of the right folks for you. But really in this ecosystem, I think there's so many resources, and a couple that I want to mention are, number one, I think weekly Rhode Island Inno, I want to say, puts out a job report. So if you can get it in there, generally, I think a lot of eyes get on that. Number two, really just working through the universities in the area. So trying to contact Brown's professional services, professional development, whatever the office is there, getting in touch. We've actually had a lot of talent come over to our side from Northeastern. Actually, Sophia Saloni sitting here as well, doing some great work from Northeastern. So I think there's a wealth of resources. It's just about taking advantage and trying to take that first step forward.
Quick note on recruiters, because in the early days, we didn't know back-end development ourselves. We ended up going through a recruiter to bring in a back-end developer who really helped and made a really big difference. But we had no idea the spread between what we were paying and what that contractor was earning. And we didn't have a lot of money. We had raised $100,000, which sounds a lot of money, $100,000 in family friends, spent $30,000 on this engineer. They took home $15K. So the recruiter took 50% of what we were paying. And then we were getting $15,000 worth of work, and we thought we were paying for 30. So if you work with agencies, you want to double tap on what their fees are, because you can end up, we blew $15,000 on a recruiter, which is an obscene amount of money. And we could have structured it differently and probably paid a recruiter $5K, which would have been also a ton of money. On Pangea, our offboarding fee is $2,500, just for reference, if you find someone full-time. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can definitely recommend Pangea. Over multiple companies, I've hired people off Pangea. I also have, obviously, Bryant is in my DNA. So I hire technically kind of biasly, but I love hiring from Bryant. Obviously, the one thing that Bryant lacks is a computer science department. But what's interesting is they actually have a data analytics department, which is surprisingly some of the smartest computer science people I've ever met are just sitting in their data science department. And they're just doing data, getting their data and business degree, but these guys are whizzes. I actually worked with a couple, the MVP of Artist Republic was actually built with a couple Bryant guys. And so it really comes down to exactly that, university connections. If there's anything Bryant connection, I can get you connected there. And yeah, that's definitely my advice in those areas.
A couple more minutes. Yeah. Paul, is that Paul or Phil? Phil. Okay. Need glasses maybe.
Going off on the hiring comment, with each new hire, it's really impactful because you're growing the team exponentially. You know, how do you know you're making the right hire? What are you looking for in those coffee chats or in those initial meetings?
My favorite interview question right now. What are the biggest problems you see in the world that you want to help solve? Always throws them off, but it helps me understand what drives them and what they're passionate about. And if they give me an answer that's nothing to do with inequality or education or like freelancing, it's like probably not a fit. If they talk about, oh, healthcare, I'm like, go talk to them. Because for us, it's like finding someone who's really aligned in terms of the problems we solve, because we work late and we're all passionate. We put our heart and souls into what we do. So a lot of it's around alignment of mission and values. It's also trying to suss out, part of it's capabilities. So part of like YC's advice on like sussing out capabilities in an interview, which is really hard, is like double tap, particularly with engineers, of like, talk to me about a decision or a time you disagreed, or like, why did you do that? Why? And like always go deeper, because like people can always give you a surface level answer, but if you pry a little bit deeper, you can kind of get to a point where like, they're like, I don't actually, you can realize that they didn't actually make that decision. So always go deep, understand values and alignments. Like I got a red flag in one this past week where he was like, I really just want to work 9 to 5. Like I want to clock out at 5. I'm like, that's fine. I respect that. Maybe you're the right hire because you have the skills, but that's a little bit of like, for us, if we care about the mission, like we have to trust that everyone's going to draw boundaries. But if you're like clock in at 9, leave at 5 as like our founding engineer, like that might not be a great fit for a startup, right? That's maybe a better fit for Johnson & Johnson, where they're going to respect that time. So that's a good thing. Another piece of like Y Combinator advice is, if you can, and this is harder with engineers, but easier with sales and marketing and design, give them a project. So Ty right here, he was the first one we put through a hiring process. Casey was hire number 1. She was an intern from Bryant. We gave them both trials in a way. So Casey started off as an intern. I said, go find companies in Rhode Island that might be a good fit. And then she started plugging me on LinkedIn, and then she made her first sale. So I was like, oh, she can do it. But it was a commission-based role. And then Ty, we had, 30 different designers. We're like, and they're all amazing. So what we did is we gave the top half of them like a trial project. We said, we're going to be redoing our landing page. Why don't you take a stab? We left it very broad. Ty's gotten better at scoping these. We said, how would you redo our landing page? And how much time do you want? You can have up to a week. So Ty said, I'll get it done by like next Wednesday. They all went away. They all came back and they all produced something for us. And it allowed us to assess how they thought. And then my co-founder and I, we had a scoring process. So we had 4 different criteria we were basing it on. We looked at 1 for designer, like their aesthetic. Did we actually like what they were producing? 2, the output, like how much do they actually produce and like how far do they go with it? Because we're looking for someone who can get a lot done. 3 was athletic ability, which was the range of skills. And like Ty knew how to design, but he could also code and was interested in that kind of stuff. So I'll give him bonus points. And then culture fit, like, did we communicate well? Did they produce on time? Did we enjoy talking with them? Were they professional, but also comfortable? And then we had a blind rating. So we had blocked out the cells, and on a scale of 1 to 5, I'd give like a 1 or a 5, 1 to 5. And John did the same thing. And then after the call, we'd reveal the results. So I get an unbiased view of my co-founder, like, oh, this person's a 17. I'd be like, well, that's a 20. And then we had a whole stack ranking system. We could probably do a whole thing about hiring. But values and mission and passion was really what you're trying to get in a sense of in the first coffee chat.
Yeah, I was going to say, going off that, when we hire developers, well, first off, I'll preface this. When it comes to hiring, I think both me and my VP of engineering, we are insanely strict, yet also laid back. And it's a really weird balance. When it comes to hiring developers, we ask them some of the craziest questions that anyone's ever seen, mainly just because we don't even want answers. Like, we ask them, one of the questions we ask is, how does an ad blocker work? no one actually really knows how an ad blocker works. There was actually one guy that was like, actually, I do know how that works because I designed one in 1992. And we're like, yo, you're hired. Like this guy has been a professional consultant with us for the last 14 months. He can fix anything. But that's the thing, is like, how does your process think and stuff like that? And then we give them a code challenge, which is usually we have them build a website, which is Breaking Bad, and you have to filter people by like when they died and like what season. But what we're looking for is like not design, like how'd you actually code? And truly, I have no idea any of that. A developer looks at it. Now, on the other side of things, I handle all the operations hires. I'm not a big questions person. I usually think that, I like to hire people on their personality. And because I think anything can be trained in terms of operations. You can train someone how to run an ad. You can train someone how to manage customer service, how to run data entry, stuff like that. But what you can't train someone is, get into the office, not 9 to 5. When, it's hell season and you're in the war room, that they don't clock out at 5, or that they are focused and they're grabbing another piece of, they're grabbing another coffee and getting back to work and, being there to support the team. That's something that is in someone's personality and not their skill set. So I look for that a lot in people. And one way I also look for personalities is I ask someone, tell me about the time that you failed epically. Like, tell me about the biggest fail you've ever had in your life. And I always judge people based on how big of the fail is, because if you're going to tell me something small, like you're like, oh, in, second grade, I got an 80. It's like, okay, well, we've all failed, and you've failed worse than that, but you're not recognizing that failure is a good thing. And instead you're trying to hide it from an interview. And that's not someone I want in my company. I want someone that recognizes failure and says, okay, this is productive, and moves forward. I also biasly, like I said, I'm a totally different person when it comes to education. I prefer people, I really don't look at GPAs, but I also prefer people that don't have a perfect GPA. Especially when looking for people out of college. I like people in like 3.2 to 3.4, because that tells me that you know how to follow instructions, but more importantly, you also don't know at the same time. You don't just follow a syllabus. And we all know in startup world, there isn't a syllabus. And so, if you can follow a syllabus and you can hammer everything out and you get straight A's, that works great in corporate world. But in startup world, those kinds of people can definitely crumble under the pressure. Because my team knows it. I'll tell them something in the morning, and by noon that is scrapped and we're moving on to another idea. So yeah, those are kind of the 3 things that I definitely look at.
Really quick caveat on coding challenges and challenges in general. If the person's really good, they're not going to do a coding challenge or a project. So you have to also like sift through. If the person's more senior level, getting to do a coding challenge or like being like, redesign our website, they're not going to do it, because there's other companies that will hire them without doing it.
The way I counteract that is pay them for the coding challenge.
Yeah, you can
50% their rate. So like if someone's $50 an hour, $25 will pay you for an hour to do your coding challenge.
Ties like back pay?
Back pay?
So the only 2 things that I want to add is number one, just like what Adam said, really, we try not to hire anyone unless they've spent some time interning or working at our firm. I think there's only 2 people working at our company right now who didn't spend, at least 3 months and more interning. I think that it's really important to assess that personality fit. And now that I have that question in my back pocket, my biggest fail, maybe we'll do a better job of it in the interview. But we're really folks who kind of like to, get our feet wet, see if we're the right fit for you, as well, not just if you're the right fit for us. I think it's a really important distinction. And then secondly, with the coding challenges or whatever questions we ask, generally, we actually try to ask people a challenge that we're currently struggling with. So it's not just, do this random task or do that. It's how are you going to approach this data problem that we're seeing right now, in what we're doing, and we want people who are able to come in immediately and be able to think through these challenges, get a sense of the way they think, not only through just problems in general, but problems that are facing our company. And that's proved to be really successful for us.
Well, everyone, it's 6 o'clock on a Thursday, which in New York is the start of the weekend. So I don't want to take any more of your evening. If you have any other questions for any of us, we'll hang around after, obviously, before our way out. So feel free to come out to us, add us on LinkedIn. Nick, Evan, thank you for doing this with me. This is fun.
Thanks for having us.
Of course.
I got to say, I'm just so excited to finally be up here on a panel with Adam. It's like, you go through this process and you finally get to fight the guy at the end of the movie, or you get to be friends, I guess, in this situation. But that's it for me. So excited to be here.
Thank you everyone for coming out. Have a good night.